Well, I overcooked the stuff a little bit, but I love these two carrots. I'm giving them to James because they're twisted together. It look kind of like a little heart made of two people. And mine is basically the same, but I'm having guacamole instead for my potato rather than gravy. And we're having red bell pepper juice. And James is going to talk about a book. Well, I made the gravy out of this, which is gross. And then I put some beef bouillon.
Bouillon! Yeah, something like that.
In it.
Mine is
because
incorrect.
It tastes so bland. It's low sodium, but it just tastes like dishwater.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Good enough. Just as long as it doesn't kill us. Okay, so how to hide an empire, okay? So here is...
are you going to hold it? Or are you
well, see, Daniel Immerwahr, if I'm not mistaken, Immerwahr means ever true. But I think he changed his name, Immerfalsch. So, yeah, see, he's kind of look out of the corner of his eyes. Yeah, are they really getting fooled by this sort of stuff? So, Associate Professor of History at Northwestern University in Evanston, Chicago, or Illinois, just north of Chicago. So not the most prestigious university in the world, but not the worst.
Take a seat.
It's not like the University of Lethbridge.
The camera can't even see you.
Yeah, but I've got to show this. How to hide an empire. Okay, so see how United States is hiding this huge empire behind its continental boundaries. And the big trouble is Hawaii. Hawaii's huge on this. You know, like Hawaii is the size of, I think it's a little bit smaller than New Jersey, which is about the size of Israel or something like that, right? So, well, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned Israel because that's an empire, I guess, according to some of these morons. I should say Dimbos. Moron, I'm using it in the sense of dull. It's not the former technical sense or anything like that. But Guam is huge here. The Swan Islands are huge here. They've got all of Greenland for Thule Air Base. An air base. You know, like, here's newsflash, Daniel Immerwahr. Greenland is part of the Danish Empire, okay? I believe it's Denmark that owns it. It's not the U.S., okay? U.S. Virgin Islands, that's part of the U.S. Empire, kind of, sort of, but I think the people are allowed to vote there. You know, Guantanamo Bay, all of Cuba is here, but it's just one little base. I think it's off here. The Philippines are, Daniel Immerwahr, newsflash, since 1946, the Philippines have not been part of the U.S. Empire, okay? Bikini Atoll, so it's just, there's no real island there, it's just an atoll. Yeah, the U.S. did some horrible tests there and stuff like that. Saipan, way too big. Puerto Rico, it's part of the U.S. Empire, but the people get to vote there. Now, they should have a couple of senators from there. They should be a state by now. I think there's over 1 million people, maybe 2 million people there, you know, which is more people than are in Wyoming. So, yeah, we've got an issue here, but that's way too big. Puerto Rico's even smaller than Hawaii. You notice how they've got it bigger than Hawaii, because Hawaii's a state, you know, and Puerto Rico is just a territory. And Puerto Rico is even smaller. I think, so let's put it into perspective. We live in the province of Alberta, 250,000 square miles. Hawaii is 6,000 square miles. So Alberta is 40 times the size of Hawaii. And
we were given this and it doesn't have any fish in it. It's an omega-3 oil, and I just downed some and it still tastes good. It's past that expiration or best before date, but it still tastes fine.
Yeah. At any rate, Puerto Rico is about 4,000 square miles. So Alberta is 60 times the size of Puerto Rico. Texas is the biggest state in the continental U.S. It's about the size of Alberta. Did you know that? So they're always talking about things being as big as Texas. Well, Alberta, they should be saying about as big as Alberta. But we're not the biggest province in Canada.
No.
So Texas is down here. You see what I'm saying? They got Puerto Rico being, Texas is 60 times the size of Puerto Rico. And they've got Puerto Rico being a substantial part of Texas. They've actually made Alaska smaller because I think Alaska is 3 times the size of Texas in real life. But then you see they're making Hawaii smaller than Puerto Rico and Guam and stuff like that because it's a state, and what they really want to deal with is this empire. So what this book should have been called, Truth in Advertising, is How to Invent an Empire. The United States is not an empire, okay? Some people will call it, even Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the Secretary of State, who had constantly called the U.S. an empire. He's using it as a metaphor, okay? And when you call it an empire, it's a metaphor gone wild. England had an empire, okay? Now, England is, I believe, 1/5 the size of Alberta, 1/5 the size of Texas, and yet they owned a continent, a subcontinent called, like it would be India, Bangladesh, maybe part of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and a variety of other places. And India, the subcontinent of India was about the size of Western Europe. And Western Europe is bigger than England, a lot bigger than England. That's what an empire is about. It's not like having a few little places scattered around the world. I study ancient history, and the ancient Assyrians is what I specialize in, and they had an empire. Assyria is a very small place. It's just like not all of the northern part of Iraq, and yet they were messing around in I'd say at one point in time they would have controlled maybe half of Turkey, and they were into Egypt, basically controlled all of Egypt for a short period of time, and on it goes. All the places in between. They were into present-day Persia. They claimed to have taken tribute, and I believe them, from India. Although they weren't in India, we've got their annals. They weren't, but the Indians were scared enough. This is East India. They were scared enough to send off tribute to the Assyrians.
Oh,
so
I ate fish oil. There is fish oil in here. It just doesn't say it in the ingredient list. You go ahead, I'm sorry.
At any rate, this guy is like one of these academics, I presume he's a putative left-winger, who are lying. And they laugh at Donald Trump saying, fake news, fake news. They're faking history. Faking news. I can laugh at Donald Trump because I try to get things right. They don't have the right to laugh at Donald Trump because they're bad. I don't know if they're as bad. They're a little bit more, they don't lie right out and make it so obvious. They're sneaky. They're like Madison Avenue, but they're coming from the ivory towers, and we pay for them. We pay to Madison Avenue indirectly, but we pay for these bozos. Yeah, I know it's the United States, but we got the same kind of bozos here at universities. And here I am, a concerned taxpayer again. I don't want to be a concerned taxpayer. I want these guys to do the job and tell the truth. I'm getting sick and tired of it.
All right, so you'd say the book is not worth reading.
Oh, it's worth reading because this one is choice. Just look at the cover. And that's the beginning. Read this stuff. This guy's the enemy of truth. There are many enemies of truth, including Donald Trump. Don't get me wrong. But one of the reasons why people are going to Trump and like lapping up fake news is because he's calling it on the people that are faking history. They're faking news too. Everyone's faking news, and I'm tired of it. The games have got to stop. People have got to start telling the truth. I don't care if it's right, left, or center of the political spectrum or off of it. Start telling the truth. Don't be making up things. Don't be using metaphor. The United States has an empire. You know where the United States used to have an empire? And it kind of still does. It's mainland stuff. You know, if you're going to talk about an empire, talk about the Chinese empire. It's a real empire because they don't allow people in Tibet to have a real vote. And they're in the process of taking over Nepal. Man, you know, that's an empire. You know, you get a guy called Edward Said, who is just the darling of these putative left-wingers. And you know what he says is he prefers empires that proceed by adjacents. What that means is they take over their neighbors. And what he doesn't like is the British Empire. I ask you, which is preferable? The various Greek empires, which were little enclaves, kind of like the European empires that went down after World War II, or the Roman Empire. Here's the Roman Empire, someone talking about it, and this is, I don't think, fake history. The Romans made a wasteland and called it peace. The Greeks didn't generally proceed that way. Why? Because they wanted to trade with the people that they were colonizing in. The Romans weren't about trade. They were about plunder and tribute and stuff like that. Yeah, the Greeks were pretty, shall we say, bum-headed when they were dealing with people. They fought wars and all that sort of stuff, and they took over territory. But it tended to be trading posts and stuff like that. So, I don't know. I'm getting sick and tired of you fake left-wingers. You're not left-wingers. You're liars. George Orwell would puke.
Done?
Yeah. Until next time.